Hello and welcome back. Today I am going to show you how to clean out some inexpensive cartridge pens. So if you are new like me to fountain pens and maybe you've used your ink up and you want to switch to a different color but you're not sure how to clean it or you're afraid of damaging the pen, this is what the video is for. So these are the inexpensive Hongdian pens you can get on Amazon. They go by a couple different names. I believe if you Google search for Light of Hope pens, you should get the same Amazon link. And I also have an affiliate link down below that if you'd like you can use. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but it helps me out. So the way I clean these out is first, of course, you take the cap off, and then I just rinse the nib off under running water for a few seconds to get these, to get the loose and dried off ink that's on the nib, get that cleaned off first. Then what you want to do is just the body and screws on these, and then this is the cartridge in here. And then I usually have a couple cups of water. And the way that these cartridges work is you can turn these and it'll draw the ink or whatever up, and then you could turn it the other way and it pushes the ink out. So we're going to do that with the water. I'm just going to stick it in here, and first I'm going to fill it with water. These also have a little metal spring in there, and since my inks, usually I have shimmer ink, so there'll be little particles in there. I like to shake these up to help loosen that. And then once I have it full of water, I will then turn it the other way and push out all the ink. So I'll do this a few times. And I have noticed that red is one of the more difficult colors of the colored inks to get out. Black can be difficult too, but I honestly don't use a lot of black ink. So, but of the, the different colors like red and blue and green, red seems to be the hardest for me to get out of my pens. And that might just be the specific red ink that I'm using. So you can see here now that this ink is turned kind of a pale pink color in there. And it might be just because the water in here is turning red. So what I'll do now is go to this clean water and draw up some of the clean water, and see it is still pink. So shake that up a little bit, put it back into this dirty water so that I have one that stays relatively clean. And I'll just keep drawing up the water from this and pushing it out into here until the water runs clean. And then at that point, it's still not totally clean. I'll take this apart. And another thing I will do is let this sit in some water in one of these cups. And I'll let it, sit for a little bit, maybe 15-20 minutes, and I'll come back and check it. And I use these clear cups because I want to be able to see what's happening with the ink in the nib, because there's really no way for me to demonstrate this without accidentally dumping the water, but we'll use this cup as an example. So when you put the nib in here, if this was like a clear cup, down at the bottom you'll be able to see any ink that's seeping out and pooling. And I check that because even though we're flushing this pen over and over, there's very often some ink that stays in, just tiny bit. And if you just soak the nib for a few minutes, you'll be able to see that ink come out, and that'll prevent you from, say, you put a yellow ink in here after and then the ink that comes out is orange. It'll help prevent that. So this takes a little bit of time. Another thing I will do is fill it with water like this, and then just let it sit like this for a few minutes while I go to the next pen. We'll do a couple different ones to kind of give you an idea. All right, so got ink on my fingers. All right, so just like before, we'll draw up some of the water. Look how dark that is. I do not match my pens to my inks typically because I like to write with the pen and have the color be different. I don't know why. And also there are times where I want to try out a specific ink and I might not have a pen that matches that color. So rather than worrying about it, I just put whatever I want in there. Okay, let's shake this up. It's starting to run a little bit more clear already. So it's a pale, kind of a pale grayish green or grayish blue in there. We can see how quickly that ran clear compared to the red. And that's been my experience, and I don't know if that's just the red that I'm using or what. So I'll let that soak in there for a minute as well. We'll go to the next one. So basically you just repeat this process with all of your pens. And also for this type of pen, these parts are all interchangeable. So I could theoretically, you know, put this cap on this pen if I wanted and, you know, make them different. Okay. So if you really want to upset some people, that might be the way to go about it. All right, now this has a lot of shimmers in it, and it looks like it might even have, yeah, see the shimmers in there? So this one had a lot of shimmers, and I have a feeling that it might have sat too long, and some of the ink may have dried out. But that's why they have these little springs in there. Some converters, instead of springs, will have like little beads, and that helps a lot with breaking up the shimmers. Okay, let's get some clear water. Yeah, the shimmers are still in there. And soaking the pen for a few minutes in water will also help disperse those shimmers and loosen them up. And I recommend, if you are going to soak the pens, to use distilled water and not tap water, because tap water has, you know, chemicals in it and minerals and stuff, and you don't know what those are going to do to your pens. I am specifically doing this with inexpensive, cheap pens from Amazon or wherever. So, you know, if I destroy these pens, I'm not out hundreds of dollars. For more expensive pens, I would follow whatever manufacturer directions. Actually, follow manufacturer directions no matter what, but these didn't really come with any instructions when I bought them, so. All right, this is another red ink. I had a couple, I actually had 3 pens filled with red ink, and they were all different reds, and I forgot to write down what they were. So the other one still has ink in it. I have to finish using it up before I can wash it out. But you can see these can be really hard to get clean. All right, and then because these have been sitting for a little bit, that red ink is starting to seep out, and I just want to show that to you. Can you see down at the bottom there on that side? You can see the red seeping out. That's why I let them soak for a couple minutes, even when they look like they're basically clean, because I don't want that mixing with the next color ink, because you know, I fill my pens depending on what ink I want to try, and it's not always another red, you know. So also some inks I have been told they don't mix well together, so you might end up with other types of problems. So I just try to get these as clean as possible. They do sell pen flush or like a pen cleaner that you can use, and from what I've read, those are a mix of water and like a soap of some kind or a detergent of some kind and ammonia. So in very, very tiny amounts. And apparently you can like flush the pen with it and then immediately after flush it with water, but you don't want to let that solution sit in your pen. So that is another option if you have a stubborn color that just won't clean out. That is something that you could use if you want to risk it. In fact, I have some, and let me just show that to you real fast. Okay, so this is what it looks like. It says Monteverde on the top there, and it's just a fountain pen flush, and it's got instructions. It tells you how to clean your pen with it. So let's see here. I'm just thinking if we could find something to put it in. I could just put it in this cup here, and maybe we could try it for one of the pens. Just pour a little bit in here. And what I will do sometimes, because of these nibs are you know, you would have to pour quite a bit of flush in there to get it over the end of the nib. I just take the converter off, and fill the converter. Oh, you can't see that. Let's move this forward. So I just put the converter directly in there and fill the converter. And you can see the little spring in there moving. See, there it goes. So I just want to shake that up a little bit. I'm going to push out the air and fill it with a little more of this pen flesh. Okay, and then I'll attach the nib here and put everything back together. And then I'll put it in this dirty water because I don't want to put this in with the clean water, with the flesh water. And already, like, I can see, I know it's hard to tell because the water below is red, but the water coming out of that is like a red color. Okay, and then we could flush it with clean water. And you can see there's bubbles in here, and that's from the pen flesh. And I just keep going, you know, rinsing over and over until we get rid of all those bubbles and things. So this can be a little bit of a tedious process, but once you've done this a few times, this is part of the reason why I have so many of these cheap pens, is because I can just do these all at once and then fill them. I'm going to just clean the converter by itself for now because we're trying to get the bubbles out of there. But already it's running a little bit clearer. I may have to do this with the other red one. Let's see here. All right, so that looks better. I'm not getting as much bubbles in there. And let's fill this with water over here. Okay, so it's still pink, so there's still definitely some residue down there in the nib. So I will fill this with water like that and just set it in here. And then I'm going to get out the first red one that we washed. Flush that out. There we go. Okay, see, it's running a little bit lighter now, which is good. And another way that I'll test to see how clean this is getting is I'll take one of these rags, I'll find an area where it's relatively clean, and I'll just lay the nib on top. And look, it made a red mark. Hopefully you can see that. And see how it's making red marks? I know for sure there's still some ink in the nib. So you could just flush that out real quick. Okay, it is looking better though. Let's try another. So these are some different things that you can do. And these nibs, in case you want this type of pen, this has a bent nib. And that gives you a little bit more line variation when you write. These are really good, I found, for the shimmer inks. I've never had a shimmer ink clog one of these pens ever. So if you have a lot of shimmer inks or you want to get some and you need a pen that will be able to handle it, this is one that I recommend for that. And I haven't tested very many other pens, but I have found that for shimmer inks, you really want to get at least a medium nib for the inks to, or for the shimmers to flow through. In my experience. If anybody has used a fine or extra fine nib that handled the shimmers really well, if you want to mention that in the comments, that'd be great. I wouldn't mind trying another, another size nib for the shimmers, something other than, medium or like the broad nibs. But yeah, I really like for my ink properties to show up really well when I write with them. So I typically go for the larger nibs rather than the smaller ones. But, I know that fine and extra fine nibs are very popular, and I'm interested about why that is. I do have one fine nib pen that I do use sometimes for journaling or whatever. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear why you prefer a fine or a fine or an extra fine nib, because I really want to learn more about these pens. So if you have any other questions or if you have any other suggestions for me, I am open to constructive criticism. And yeah, once these pens are done being washed, you usually get them all clean. I usually let them dry overnight. And once they're fully dry, I will re-ink them with a new ink and I'll refill them. So we can pause this and come back and I'll show you how I do that. All right, and we're back with a dry pen. So this is one that I cleaned previously so that we wouldn't have to wait a whole day on those other pens. It's the same kind of pen as before, same brand and everything. All right, so here's what this looks like. It's dry. We're just going to put it together. And what we will do is open this box. And someone suggested or explained why people will fill the ink by placing the pen directly into the bottle. Normally I use a little eyedropper or something to fill it because that's just how I always did it. But let's go ahead and try doing it the other way, just for fun. So I guess I would just put it directly in here like this and see if we can get the ink to come up. Well, it helps if I put the plunger down first. Okay, there we go. Okay, it seems to be filling. There it goes. Okay, so it's filled up. And we will put the body back on like this. Basically, at this point, you just reassemble the pen. And then we just need to make sure it writes. So now that I got ink all over me, I guess that's sort of the point. Let's see here. I had some paper. There we go. Okay, piece of paper. And I usually post my pens before I write with them, so let's do that. Okay, so it's writing. So everything seems good. And at this point, I just put the pen back together and I will use it. Whoops, and it got a drip. So maybe I need to be more careful. I wonder what that's from. Well, doesn't seem to be dripping now. All right, so maybe it's just from when I filled it. Okay. I'll set that aside so the drip can dry. But that is how you wash and, clean the pens and then set them aside to dry. And then once they're dry, you can go ahead and fill them with the next color and use them like normal. So I hope this was helpful. If you've, never had to clean one of your pens before, or, you're like me and afraid of breaking everything, that's how I clean them. So if anybody has any suggestions on maybe a better way to do it, or, any alternatives, please let me know. This is just my method and I am still learning. So thank you so much for watching. If you would like to see any other content, please let me know. And if I can do it, I will try my best. And if you leave a comment, I will also reply. I'm trying to reply to everybody. So you have a great day and thank you so much for watching, and like and subscribe if you'd like to see more.